My father stood at the podium accepting the Businessman of the Year award, thanking everyone who made his success possible. Everyone except the anonymous investor who'd been secretly funding his competitors for 3 years. That investor was sitting in the back row, wearing a simple black dress and a smile he'd never recognize. That investor was his daughter, the daughter whose career he'd dismissed as glorified secretarial work just 5 years earlier. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The rejection letter trembled in my hands as I stared at the company letterhead one more time. Brooks and Associates Real Estate. My father's company. The company where I'd grown up running through hallways, helping file documents and dreaming of the day I'd join the family business as more than just Richard Brooks' little girl playing office. "Hannah, sweetheart, come into my study. We need to talk." Dad's voice carried that tone I'd learned to dread over the years. The tone that meant he'd already made up his mind about something and was about to deliver news disguised as a discussion. I folded the rejection letter carefully and slipped it into the pocket of my blazer, the same navy blazer I'd bought specifically for what I thought would be my job interview at his company. The study smelled like leather and disappointment. Dad sat behind his massive oak desk, the same desk where he'd helped me with homework 15 years earlier. Back then, I was his little princess who could do no wrong. Now, apparently, I was something else entirely. "I've given your application careful consideration," he began, not meeting my eyes. Instead, he shuffled through papers on his desk, treating this conversation like any other business transaction. "And I think it's best if you explore opportunities elsewhere." The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd graduated summa cum laude from the University of Texas with a finance degree. I'd earned my MBA while working nights at a financial planning firm. I'd spent every summer since I was 16 learning the real estate business from the ground up. I knew property values, market trends, and investment strategies better than most of his current employees. "Dad, I don't understand. My qualifications speak for themselves. I've been preparing for this my entire life." He finally looked up, and I saw something in his expression that I'd never seen before when he looked at me. Dismissal. Complete. Casual dismissal of everything I'd worked for. "Hannah, you're a bright girl, but this business requires a certain kind of person. Someone who can handle the pressure, make tough decisions, deal with demanding clients. What you've been doing at that little financial firm is basically secretarial work. Taking notes, filing paperwork, making coffee for the real decision makers. Secretarial work." The words echoed in my head like a slap. I'd been analyzing investment portfolios, advising clients on major financial decisions, and managing accounts, worth millions of dollars. But to my father, it was secretarial work. "You'd be happier in something more suited to your strengths," he continued, his voice taking on that patronizing tone he used with Mom when she suggested changes to his business operations. "Maybe teaching, or working for a nonprofit, something where you can help people without the stress of real business pressures." I stood there in silence, feeling something fundamental shift inside me. This wasn't just about a job. This was about everything I'd believed about my place in my father's world, my family's respect for my abilities, my own worth in the eyes of the person whose approval I'd spent my entire life seeking. "What about Jake?" I asked quietly. My younger brother was 22, fresh out of college with a communications degree and a resume that consisted mainly of fraternity events and spring break trips. "He doesn't have any business experience. At all." Dad's face brightened in a way that made my stomach clench. "Jake has natural instincts for this business. He understands people, knows how to build relationships. He's got that Brooks entrepreneurial spirit." The Brooks entrepreneurial spirit. Apparently, that was something I'd failed to inherit despite sharing the same last name and dedicating my entire academic career to business and finance. "I've already offered him a position as junior associate. He'll start next month." The room went quiet except for the ticking of the antique clock on the mantelpiece. Each tick felt like another nail in the coffin of the relationship I'd thought we had. I wasn't just being rejected for a job. I was being told that my own father saw me as fundamentally inadequate for the work that had been my passion since childhood. "I see," I managed to say, though my voice sounded strange and distant even to my own ears. "Don't take it personally, sweetheart. You're smart and capable. Just not for this kind of work. Your mother never understood the business side of things, either. She's much happier focusing on the social aspects, the charity events, the networking dinners. Maybe you could help her with that side of things." The comparison to Mom stung more than anything else he'd said. Carol Brooks was intelligent and accomplished in her own right, but she'd given up her own career aspirations when she married Dad, channeling her ambitions into being the perfect corporate wife. The suggestion that I follow the same path felt like a death sentence for everything I'd worked toward. I walked out of that study feeling like I was sleepwalking through someone else's nightmare. The hallways of my childhood home, once filled with warmth and possibility, now felt like a museum, dedicated to dreams I was apparently never meant to pursue. Mom was arranging flowers in the kitchen when I found her, her movements precise and graceful in the way that comes from years of practice at domestic perfection. She looked up when I entered, and I saw immediately that she knew what had happened. The pity in her eyes was almost worse than Dad's dismissal. "Oh, honey," she said softly, setting down her pruning shears. "I'm so sorry. You knew he was going to reject me." It wasn't a question. Mom's expression confirmed what I'd already suspected. This hadn't been a real consideration of my qualifications. The decision had been made before I'd even submitted my application. "Your father has very traditional ideas about women in business," she said carefully, choosing her words like she was navigating a minefield. "He's not trying to hurt you. He genuinely believes he's protecting you from a world that might be too harsh. Too harsh." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I've been working in finance for 3 years. I've dealt with aggressive clients, hostile negotiations, and million-dollar decisions. But apparently that's just secretarial work." Mom flinched at the bitterness in my voice. "He doesn't understand what you actually do at your job. To him, any work that doesn't involve construction sites and property development seems less substantial. Then maybe it's time he learned what substantial really looks like." The words came out before I'd fully formed the thought, but as soon as I said them, I felt something crystallize in my mind. A plan that was audacious and risky and exactly the kind of thing that would prove every one of Dad's assumptions wrong. Mom studied my face with the intuition that comes from decades of reading people's emotions. "Hannah, whatever you're thinking, please don't do anything rash." But I was already past the point of rational decision-making. The hurt and anger were transforming into something more focused and dangerous. Determination with a sharp edge that would cut through everything my father thought he knew about his capable little girl. That night, I called Tyler Martinez, my best friend from business school and currently a rising star at Summit Capital Partners in Austin. Tyler had been trying to recruit me for 2 years, offering positions that would triple my current salary and put me at the center of some of the most innovative investment strategies in the country. "Hannah, please tell me you're finally ready to leave Denver and join the big leagues down here." Tyler's enthusiasm was infectious even over the phone. We'd maintained our friendship through late-night study sessions, shared ambitions, and mutual support through the challenges of breaking into male-dominated financial circles. If anyone would understand what I was planning, it would be Tyler. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to trust me without asking too many questions right now." The tone of my voice must have conveyed the seriousness of the situation, because Tyler's joking manner immediately shifted to focused attention. "Whatever you need, you know that." How would someone go about making large-scale real estate investments through anonymous shell companies? Hypothetically speaking. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Tyler's voice came back, careful and intrigued. That's a very specific hypothetical question. Are we talking about legal anonymity for legitimate business purposes? Completely legal. I'm talking about creating investment vehicles that protect the investor's identity while allowing them to participate in major real estate deals, property development, commercial acquisitions, that kind of thing. That's actually a specialty of ours here at Summit. We handle anonymous investments for high-net-worth individuals who want to participate in markets without revealing their involvement for strategic reasons. Why are you asking? I took a deep breath, knowing that what I was about to say would change everything. Because I'm about to become one of those high-net-worth individuals, and I want to make some investments in the Denver commercial real estate market. Specifically, I want to fund competitors to Brooks and Associates. The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if the connection had dropped. Finally, Tyler's voice came back, filled with a mixture of admiration and concern. Hannah, what happened? This sounds like more than just a career change. My father just told me that my work in finance is basically secretarial work, and that I'm not suited for real business pressures. He rejected my application to join the family company and offered the position to my brother instead. That's incredibly short-sighted of him. Your analytical skills are better than half the people I work with here. I know, and I'm going to prove it in a way he'll never see coming. Tyler was quiet for a moment, and I could almost hear the wheels turning in his head. Tyler understood strategic thinking in ways that went beyond traditional business planning. This was someone who'd helped orchestrate investment deals that reshaped entire market sectors. You want to use anonymous investments to support his competitors and undermine his market position. I want to demonstrate that his dismissive attitude toward my capabilities was the biggest mistake of his professional life. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I want him to watch other firms succeed with the kind of innovative investment backing that he could have had if he'd taken me seriously. That's either brilliant or career suicide. Possibly both. Will you help me? Another pause, then Tyler's voice came back filled with the excitement of someone who recognized a challenge worth taking. Pack your bags. You're moving to Austin. I'll have a position waiting for you at Summit, and we'll set up the shell companies you need. But Hannah, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. No half measures, no emotional decisions. That could backfire. This is going to be strategic, professional, and devastating in all the best ways. Ours? I felt a smile spread across my face for the first time since walking out of Dad's study. How soon can I start? How soon can you get here? 2 weeks later, I was loading the last of my belongings into a moving truck while my parents stood on the front porch of the house where I'd grown up. Dad looked confused and slightly annoyed that I was leaving Denver so abruptly. Mom looked worried in the way that mothers do when they sense their children are about to embark on something that will change them fundamentally. I still don't understand why you're rushing into this, Dad said, his voice carrying the tone he used when he thought someone was making an impulsive mistake. Austin is expensive, and this investment firm job probably won't be as stable as what you have here. I adjusted the strap of my laptop bag, feeling the weight of the business plan I'd been developing for the past 2 weeks. The plan that would make everything he thought he knew about stability look naive. Sometimes you have to take risks to build something meaningful, I replied. I learned that from watching you build your business. He seemed pleased by the reference to his entrepreneurial journey, completely missing the irony that his own daughter was about to embark on an entrepreneurial journey that would directly challenge everything he'd built. Well, just remember that there's always a place for you here if things don't work out. Maybe by then you'll be ready to consider something more practical. I hugged them both goodbye, knowing that the next time I saw them, everything would be different. I would be different. And my father would finally understand exactly what kind of business instincts ran in the Brooks family bloodline. The drive to Austin felt like traveling into a completely different future. Every mile that stretched between me and Denver was another step away from being Richard Brooks' disappointing daughter and toward becoming Hannah Brooks, investment strategist and anonymous financial force. Tyler met me at my new apartment with champagne and a stack of legal documents that would create my new professional identity. "Welcome to your new life," Tyler said, raising a glass in toast. Phoenix Ventures LLC is officially registered, funded, and ready to make some very strategic investments in the Denver commercial real estate market. Phoenix Ventures, rising from the ashes of my father's dismissal to become something he'd never see coming. To proving that secretarial work can be surprisingly profitable, I said, clinking my glass against Tyler's. As I settled into my new life in Austin, working days at Summit Capital Partners and evenings researching the Denver real estate market through my Phoenix Ventures identity, I felt a sense of purpose that I'd never experienced before. This wasn't just about proving my father wrong. This was about discovering who I really was when I stopped trying to fit into someone else's definition of my capabilities. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Phoenix Ventures would identify promising real estate development projects in the Denver market and provide the kind of innovative financing that traditional banks and investors often avoided. Young developers with ambitious projects, experienced firms looking to expand into new sectors, established companies seeking capital for ventures that required creative thinking rather than conventional approaches. Everything that Brooks and Associates avoided because it was too risky, too innovative, or too far outside their traditional comfort zone. Within 6 months, Phoenix Ventures had quietly funded 4 major projects that were transforming the Denver commercial landscape. A mixed-use development that combined affordable housing with retail space. A tech campus that was attracting major companies to relocate their operations. A historic renovation project that was revitalizing an entire downtown district. An eco-friendly office complex that was setting new standards for sustainable commercial construction. Each project represented the kind of forward-thinking investment strategy that my father had dismissed as impractical. Each success demonstrated exactly what he'd lost when he decided his daughter wasn't suited for real business pressures. And, through it all, I remained completely anonymous. Phoenix Ventures was registered through a series of legal entities that protected my identity, while allowing me to participate fully in the financial and strategic aspects of each investment. The developers I worked with knew they had a reliable funding source, but they had no idea that their anonymous investor was the daughter of Richard Brooks, watching from Austin as her father's competitors gained ground in the market he'd once dominated. The transformation was intoxicating. During the day, I worked with Tyler and the Summit team on investment strategies that managed hundreds of millions in capital. In the evenings, I analyzed market reports and development proposals, making decisions that were reshaping the commercial real estate landscape in my hometown. I was becoming exactly the kind of person my father had insisted I could never be, while he remained completely oblivious to the fact that his biggest competitor was the daughter he'd sent away to find something more suitable to her limited capabilities. The coffee shop near Summit Capital Partners became my second office, where I spent early mornings before work analyzing property reports and development proposals that crossed my desk through Phoenix Ventures. Austin's tech boom had created a network of entrepreneurs and investors who understood that the most profitable opportunities often came disguised as unconventional risks. I was learning to think like them, to see possibilities where traditional investors saw problems. Tyler had introduced me to the concept of patient capital, investments that prioritized long-term strategic positioning over immediate returns. It was a philosophy that perfectly aligned with what I was building in Denver, where each project I funded was designed not just to generate profit, but to demonstrate innovation and forward thinking that Brooks and Associates consistently avoided. The morning news played on the coffee shop's television as I reviewed financial projections for a proposed mixed-use development in Denver's Arts District. The developer, Maria Santos, had pitched the project to every major real estate investment firm in Colorado and been rejected by all of them. Too risky, they said. Unproven market, uncertain returns, complicated zoning requirements, everything that traditional real estate investors had been trained to avoid. But Maria's vision was exactly what Denver needed. Affordable artist studios combined with gallery space and residential lofts, creating a community where creativity and commerce could coexist. The financial projections were conservative but solid, and the social impact would be transformative for a neighborhood that had been struggling with urban decay for decades. Phoenix Ventures funded the project within a week of Maria's initial proposal. No lengthy committee reviews, no demands for additional collateral, no attempts to restructure the project to fit conventional investment models. Just a straightforward commitment to support innovation with the kind of responsive decision-making that made entrepreneurs choose to work with us instead of larger, more bureaucratic firms. My phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. "Conference room, now, something big." I gathered my papers and walked the 3 blocks to Summit's offices, wondering what kind of opportunity had Tyler excited enough to interrupt my morning routine. The conference room was already occupied when I arrived, with Tyler and 2 other senior partners examining what appeared to be a comprehensive market analysis spread across the table. "Hannah, meet David Chen and Patricia Walsh from our strategic acquisitions team," Tyler said, gesturing toward the other partners. "They've been tracking some interesting activity in the Denver commercial real estate market." David looked up from the documents with the kind of intense focus that meant he'd discovered something significant. "There's a new player in Denver that's been making very strategic investments over the past year. Anonymous funding through shell companies, but the pattern of investments suggests someone with sophisticated market knowledge and substantial capital reserves." My heart rate accelerated, but I kept my expression neutral. "What kind of pattern?" Patricia spread out a map of Denver with colored pins marking various development projects. Mixed-use developments in emerging neighborhoods, sustainable construction projects, tech-focused office spaces, historic renovations that preserve character while adding modern functionality. All the projects that traditional Denver investors have been avoiding because they require creative thinking rather than conventional approaches. Tyler was studying the map with obvious admiration. "Whoever this is, they're not just making random investments. They're systematically targeting opportunities that will reshape Denver's commercial landscape over the next decade. It's exactly the kind of long-term strategic thinking we try to teach our clients." "The interesting part is the funding structure," David continued. "Each investment is precisely calibrated to provide exactly what the developer needs without overcapitalizing or creating unnecessary debt burdens. Someone understands both the financial and practical aspects of real estate development at a very sophisticated level." I moved closer to examine the map, seeing my own work reflected in the pattern of pins that marked Phoenix Ventures' investments. From this perspective, the strategy was even more obvious than I'd realized. I wasn't just funding individual projects. I was creating a network of innovative developments that would establish new standards for commercial real estate in Denver. "Have you been able to identify the investor?" I asked, curious about how visible my activities had become. Patricia shook her head. "The legal structure is extremely well designed. Multiple layers of shell companies, all legitimate and properly registered, but creating complete anonymity for the actual funding source. Whoever set this up understands both investment strategy and legal protection." Tyler was looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Hannah, you grew up in Denver, right? Do you have any insights about who might be behind this kind of strategic investment activity?" The question felt like a test, though I wasn't sure what Tyler suspected. Denver's real estate market has always been dominated by a few established firms that tend to be conservative in their investment approaches. This kind of innovative funding would definitely stand out. "That's what makes it so interesting," David said. "Traditional Denver investors like Brooks and Associates have been losing market share to these anonymous investments. Developers are choosing innovative funding over established relationships because they're getting better terms and more creative support." The mention of my father's company made my pulse quicken, but I managed to maintain my professional composure. Brooks and Associates is pretty traditional in their approach. They've built their reputation on safe, conventional investments. Exactly, Patricia said, which makes them vulnerable to the kind of strategic competition they're facing. Their business model assumes that developers will always choose established firms over unknown investors. But that assumption is proving incorrect when the unknown investor offers better terms and faster decision-making. Tyler was still watching me with that unreadable expression. We're considering reaching out to this anonymous investor to explore potential partnerships. Someone with their market knowledge and strategic thinking would be valuable to work with. Directly. I felt a moment of panic at the thought of Tyler discovering my dual identity, followed immediately by excitement at the possibility of expanding Phoenix Ventures' capabilities through partnership with Summit. How would you approach someone who's clearly invested significant effort in maintaining their anonymity? Very carefully, David said. Through intermediaries with respect for their privacy and with a compelling value proposition that would make partnership worth revealing their identity. The right approach would be to demonstrate that we understand and appreciate their strategy, Patricia added. Show them that we're not trying to compete with or replace what they're doing, but to enhance it through collaboration. Tyler stood and walked to the window that overlooked Austin's downtown district. Hannah, I have a proposal for you. Your background in finance and your knowledge of the Denver market make you the ideal person to develop a partnership strategy for approaching this investor. Are you interested in taking the lead on this project? The irony was delicious. Tyler was asking me to develop a strategy for approaching myself. That sounds like an interesting challenge. What kind of timeline are we looking at? Take your time to develop the right approach, Tyler said. This isn't someone we want to spook by moving too quickly. But Hannah, if you can successfully establish a partnership with this investor, it would be a significant career opportunity for you. The kind of achievement that would establish you as a major player in the industry. I left that meeting with my mind racing through possibilities I hadn't previously considered. Partnership with Summit could provide Phoenix Ventures with resources and expertise that would accelerate every aspect of my Denver strategy. But it would also require careful management of my dual identity and strategic thinking about when and how to reveal the connection. Over the following weeks, I developed what I privately called the reverse recruitment strategy. Instead of Summit approaching Phoenix Ventures, I would create a scenario where Phoenix Ventures approached Summit with a partnership proposal. This would allow me to control the timing and terms of any collaboration while maintaining the appearance that the initiative came from the anonymous investor rather than from Summit's internal research. The strategy required creating a paper trail that would support the narrative. Phoenix Ventures began requesting information about Summit's investment capabilities and track record, using intermediary attorneys to maintain anonymity while expressing interest in potential collaboration. I crafted each communication to demonstrate sophistication and strategic thinking while revealing just enough information to keep Summit engaged. Tyler updated me regularly on Summit's response to these inquiries, unknowingly providing me with intelligence about how my own proposals were being received. The feedback was universally positive. Summit's leadership was impressed by Phoenix Ventures' analytical depth and strategic vision. They were eager to explore partnership opportunities with an investor who demonstrated such clear understanding of market dynamics and development potential. This anonymous investor is exactly the kind of strategic thinker we want to work with, Tyler told me over lunch one afternoon. Their communications show sophisticated understanding of both financial and practical aspects of real estate development. Plus, their track record in Denver proves they can identify and execute profitable investments in challenging markets. I nodded thoughtfully, as if considering the implications. It sounds like they're evaluating Summit as carefully as you're evaluating them. Definitely. They're asking all the right questions about our capabilities, our investment philosophy, our track record with innovative projects, someone who does their homework before making commitments. What kind of partnership structure do you think would work? Tyler leaned back in his chair, clearly excited by the possibilities. Ideally, a collaboration where Phoenix Ventures provides market knowledge and investment capital for Denver projects, while Summit provides analytical support and access to our broader network of investors and developers. We could scale their Denver strategy to other markets while they help us establish a presence in Colorado. It was exactly the kind of partnership I'd been hoping for, but hearing Tyler describe it from Summit's perspective helped me understand how to structure the proposal to maximize benefits for both sides. Phoenix Ventures would maintain independence and anonymity while gaining access to Summit's resources and expertise. Summit would gain entry to the Denver market and partnership, with a proven investor without the overhead of establishing independent operations in Colorado. The formal partnership proposal took 6 weeks to develop, with each version refined based on feedback I received through Tyler's updates about Summit's internal discussions. When Phoenix Ventures finally submitted the complete proposal, it was precisely calibrated to address every concern and opportunity that Summit's leadership had identified during their evaluation process. Tyler called me into his office the day after Summit's executive committee reviewed the proposal. His excitement was immediately obvious from his expression and body language. "Hannah, the partnership proposal from Phoenix Ventures is extraordinary. They're offering everything we hoped for and several things we hadn't even considered. The executive committee approved moving forward with formal negotiations." I tried to look appropriately interested rather than triumphant. "What kind of terms are they proposing?" "Joint investment vehicles for Denver projects, with Phoenix maintaining decision-making authority for local market investments, while Summit provides analytical support and access to our investor network. They're also proposing to share their research and market intelligence with us, which could help us identify similar opportunities in other markets." It sounds like they're offering significant value in exchange for partnership. More than significant. They're essentially offering to teach us their investment strategy while providing access to deals they've already identified and vetted. It's the kind of partnership that could transform Summit's capabilities in secondary markets. Tyler walked to his window and looked out at the Austin skyline. "Hannah, I want you to be our primary liaison for this partnership. You understand? The Denver market. You have the analytical skills to evaluate their proposals, and you've already demonstrated excellent strategic thinking in developing our approach to them. The request was perfect for my purposes, allowing me to manage both sides of the partnership while maintaining my dual identity. I'd be honored to take on that responsibility. The first step is a face-to-face meeting with representatives from Phoenix Ventures. They've agreed to meet in Denver next month to discuss partnership structure and identify initial collaboration opportunities. I want you to lead Summit's negotiation team." I felt a moment of panic at the thought of attending a meeting where I was supposed to represent Summit in negotiations with myself. "Have they indicated who will be representing Phoenix at the meeting?" "They're sending their primary investment strategist and decision-maker, someone who's been directly involved in all their Denver investments and has authority to negotiate partnership terms." I spent the rest of that day developing a plan for managing what was essentially a negotiation with myself. The solution required creating a credible representative for Phoenix Ventures who could attend the meeting while maintaining my own anonymity. After considering various options, I settled on using Claire Morrison, a freelance business consultant I'd worked with in Austin who specialized in representing investors who preferred to maintain privacy. Claire was intrigued by the assignment. When I explained it to her, though I was careful to present it as a standard anonymous investor situation rather than revealing the personal motivation behind Phoenix Ventures, she agreed to represent Phoenix in the Summit meeting after I provided her with comprehensive briefings on the partnership proposal and Phoenix's investment strategy. "This is actually quite sophisticated," Claire said after reviewing the partnership documents. Phoenix Ventures has created an optimal structure for collaboration without compromising their independence or anonymity. Whoever developed this strategy understands both legal protection and business development at a very advanced level. I smiled, accepting the compliment on behalf of my anonymous alter ego. They seem to have thought through all the potential complications. The interesting thing is how well this partnership aligns with both organizations' strategic interests. It's not just a deal that benefits one side more than the other. Phoenix gets access to Summit's resources and expertise, while Summit gets market entry and collaboration with a proven investor. Someone spent serious time analyzing what each organization needed and crafting a proposal that delivered mutual benefit. The meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday morning at the Westin Hotel in downtown Denver, neutral territory that would allow both teams to meet professionally without either organization hosting the other. I arranged to arrive in Denver the night before, officially to prepare for Summit's negotiation strategy, but actually to coordinate with Claire and ensure that Phoenix Ventures would be represented effectively. Flying back to Denver felt like returning to a battlefield where I'd been defeated, except now I was returning as the commanding general of the opposing army. The city looked different from the airplane window, no longer the place where my father had dismissed my capabilities, but the market where I'd proven him wrong through a year of strategic investments that were reshaping the commercial real estate landscape. I stayed at a different hotel from the one where the meeting would take place, maintaining the separation between my Summit identity and my Phoenix activities. That evening, I met with Claire at a quiet restaurant to review our strategy for the next day's negotiations. The key is to position this partnership as Phoenix's initiative rather than responding to Summit's research, I explained. Phoenix approached Summit because they recognized mutual benefit, not because Summit identified them as a potential partner. Claire nodded, understanding the subtle but important distinction. Phoenix is the established player in Denver who's choosing to work with Summit, rather than Summit discovering Phoenix and proposing collaboration. Exactly. That dynamic gives Phoenix more leverage in determining partnership terms and maintaining their preferred level of anonymity. What kind of anonymity protection does Phoenix require? I'd anticipated this question and prepared an answer that would satisfy Summit's due diligence requirements while protecting my identity. Phoenix's investor requires complete anonymity for personal and strategic reasons. All communications go through designated representatives, all legal documentation uses shell company structures, and no meetings or negotiations include direct participation by the actual investor. That's not unusual for high-net-worth individuals who want to avoid publicity or protect their privacy for security reasons. Phoenix is also concerned about maintaining strategic advantage in the Denver market. If their identity became known, it could affect their ability to identify and secure deals before competitors become aware of opportunities. Claire understood the implications immediately. Anonymous investment allows them to evaluate opportunities without market speculation affecting property values or development costs. We spent the rest of the evening reviewing every aspect of the partnership proposal, ensuring that Claire could represent Phoenix's interests effectively while I played my role as Summit's negotiation lead. The irony of preparing to negotiate with myself wasn't lost on me, but the complexity of managing dual identities was also exhilarating in ways I hadn't expected. The next morning, I arrived at the Westin an hour early to review Summit's negotiation strategy with Tyler and set up our conference room. Tyler was more excited than I'd seen him since joining Summit, clearly recognizing that successful partnership with Phoenix Ventures could establish him as a major player in the firm's strategic development. "Hannah, this could be the kind of deal that defines careers," he said as we reviewed our presentation materials. "If we can successfully partner with Phoenix, it demonstrates our ability to identify and collaborate with sophisticated investors in secondary markets. That's exactly the kind of capability Summit needs to expand beyond our current geographic focus." I nodded appropriately while privately appreciating the irony that my father's rejection had led to an opportunity that could define Tyler's career at Summit. What's our primary objective for today's meeting? Establish mutual trust and compatibility, agree on basic partnership structure, and identify the first project we'll collaborate on. We want to prove that Summit can add value to Phoenix's operations while demonstrating that Phoenix can provide the market access we need in Denver. Claire arrived exactly on time, dressed professionally and carrying herself with the confident demeanor of someone representing significant financial interests. I introduced myself as Summit's lead strategist for the partnership, maintaining my professional composure while internally marveling at the complexity of the situation I'd created. Ms. Morrison, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. Phoenix Ventures has developed an impressive portfolio in the Denver market. Phoenix is interested in exploring collaboration with organizations that share our commitment to innovative investment strategies, Claire replied, perfectly delivering the message I'd prepared. Summit's track record suggests you understand the kind of long-term thinking that creates sustainable value. Tyler launched into Summit's presentation about our capabilities and strategic vision, unknowingly trying to impress the very person who'd already decided to partner with us. I found myself in the surreal position of evaluating my own organization's presentation from the perspective of Phoenix Ventures, while simultaneously representing Summit's interests in the negotiation. The meeting proceeded exactly as I'd planned, with both sides expressing enthusiasm for collaboration, while establishing the framework for partnership that I'd designed to benefit both organizations. Claire represented Phoenix's interests perfectly, asking the right questions and expressing appropriate interest in Summit's capabilities, while maintaining the air of careful evaluation that would make the partnership feel like a mutual choice, rather than one-sided opportunity. By the end of the morning, we'd agreed on basic partnership terms and identified 3 Denver projects where Phoenix and Summit would collaborate on investment and development strategy. Tyler was practically glowing with excitement about the opportunities we'd established, while Claire maintained the professional reserve appropriate for representing anonymous investors in high-stakes negotiations. I think this could be the beginning of a very productive relationship, Tyler said as we concluded the meeting. Phoenix's strategic approach to the Denver market is exactly what Summit needs to establish our presence in Colorado. Phoenix is pleased with Summit's analytical capabilities and strategic vision, Claire replied. This partnership should benefit both organizations significantly. After Claire left, Tyler and I spent an hour debriefing the meeting and planning next steps for implementing the partnership. His enthusiasm was infectious, and I found myself genuinely excited about the possibilities we'd created, even though I'd essentially negotiated a deal with myself. Hannah, you handled that negotiation brilliantly, Tyler said as we packed up our materials. Phoenix's representative clearly respected your analytical approach and strategic thinking. I think your background in Denver was crucial for establishing credibility with them. I smiled, accepting praise for successfully representing Summit's interests in negotiations with my own organization. Phoenix seems committed to making this partnership work. I think we've established a foundation for significant collaboration. More than significant, this could transform Summit's approach to secondary market investments. And Hannah, your role in making this happen positions you for major advancement within the firm. Partnership deals like this are exactly what the ASI Executive Committee notices when they're considering promotions and leadership opportunities. Flying back to Austin that evening, I reflected on the complexity of what I'd accomplished. In less than 2 years, I'd transformed from Richard Brooks's rejected daughter into a strategic force in the Denver real estate market, while simultaneously advancing my career at Summit through partnership with my own anonymous investment activities. The irony was perfect. My father had dismissed my capabilities as inadequate for real business pressures, but I'd created business pressures that were reshaping the market he'd dominated for decades. Brooks and Associates was losing ground to innovative competitors funded by the daughter he'd deemed unsuited for the family business. But the real satisfaction wasn't just about proving my father wrong. It was about discovering who I could become when I stopped trying to fit into someone else's definition of my potential. Phoenix Ventures represented everything I was capable of achieving when I trusted my own strategic instincts and refused to accept limitations imposed by other people's narrow vision of what I should be. The partnership with Summit would accelerate everything I'd been building in Denver while advancing my career in ways that would eventually make my success impossible for my father to ignore. But for now, I was content to remain anonymous, watching from Austin as my investments continued reshaping the commercial real estate landscape in the city, where I'd been told I wasn't suited for real business challenges. The foundation was set for the next phase of my strategy, where the anonymous investor would become impossible to ignore, and Richard Brooks would finally understand exactly what kind of business instincts his daughter had inherited. The first crack in my father's business empire came on a Thursday morning when Marcus Thompson, his longtime business partner, walked into the Brooks & Associates conference room carrying a resignation letter and 20 years of suppressed frustrations. I learned about this confrontation through the real estate industry newsletter that landed in my Austin office inbox, but the details came later through my own carefully cultivated network of Denver contacts who had no idea they were feeding information to Richard Brooks' estranged daughter. Marcus had been the innovative half of the Brooks & Associates partnership, the one who identified emerging market trends and proposed creative investment strategies that Richard consistently rejected as too risky or unconventional. For 2 decades, Marcus had watched his proposals get shelved while competitors implemented similar strategies with tremendous success. The breaking point came when Marcus discovered that 3 of his rejected development projects had been funded by anonymous investors and were generating exactly the returns he'd predicted. The confrontation was loud enough that the entire office heard Marcus shouting about missed opportunities and stubborn traditionalism. According to Linda Foster, Dad's secretary who'd been with the company since before I was born, Marcus accused my father of letting fear and inflexibility cost the firm millions in potential revenue. The partnership that had built Brooks & Associates into a major Denver real estate firm dissolved in a single morning, with Marcus walking away to establish his own company focused on exactly the kind of innovative investments that Phoenix Ventures had been funding. The timing wasn't coincidental. I'd been carefully monitoring the tension between the partners through my network of industry contacts, waiting for the right moment to accelerate the pressure on my father's business model. When Marcus Thompson launched his new firm, Phoenix Ventures was ready with funding for his first 3 projects, all developments that Brooks & Associates had previously rejected as insufficiently conservative for their investment criteria. Tyler called me into his office the morning after Marcus Thompson's resignation became public knowledge throughout the Denver real estate community. His expression was a mixture of excitement and concern, the look of someone who'd identified both opportunity and potential complications. "Hannah, the situation in Denver just became much more interesting. Marcus Thompson, the partner who just left Brooks & Associates, has a reputation as one of the most innovative thinkers in Colorado commercial real estate. His departure weakens Brooks significantly, while potentially strengthening our partnership opportunities with Phoenix Ventures." I maintained my professional composure while privately celebrating another step in my father's business education. How does Thompson's independence affect our collaboration with Phoenix? Thompson's new firm will likely be competing for the same opportunities that Phoenix has been funding, but there's also potential for Phoenix to work directly with Thompson, since his approach aligns perfectly with their investment philosophy. We need to understand how this changes the competitive landscape. Tyler spread out a market analysis across his desk, showing the network of recent Denver developments and the relationships between various investment sources. The pattern was becoming clear even to outside observers. Traditional firms like Brooks and Associates were losing market share to more innovative competitors who had access to creative funding sources. "There's something else," Tyler continued, his voice dropping to the confidential tone he used for sensitive information. "I've been hearing rumors about Richard Brooks's reaction to losing his partner. Apparently, he's becoming increasingly frustrated about competitors securing deals that his firm should have been positioned to win. The news sent a thrill of satisfaction through me, though I was careful not to let it show on my face. My father was finally experiencing the consequences of his rigid thinking and dismissive attitude toward innovation. Is Brooks and Associates in serious financial trouble? Not yet, but they're definitely losing momentum. Thomson was responsible for most of their successful project identifications over the past 5 years. Without his market insights, Brooks is relying on traditional approaches that aren't competitive in the current environment. Tyler walked to his window and looked out at the Austin skyline, his expression thoughtful. Hannah, I want you to reach out to Phoenix Ventures and see if they're interested in expanding our partnership to include direct collaboration with Thomson's new firm. If we can facilitate a relationship between Phoenix and Thomson, it could establish Summit as the primary intermediary for innovative Denver investments. The request was perfect for my purposes, allowing me to coordinate between all the players in this evolving situation while maintaining my anonymous position. I'll contact Phoenix's representatives and explore their interest in working with Thomson directly. Over the following weeks, I orchestrated a complex dance of business relationships that would have impressed even my father if he'd been able to see the strategic thinking behind it. Phoenix Ventures approached Thomson's new firm with funding for ambitious projects that showcased his innovative vision. Summit Capital Partners provided analytical support and access to additional investors who were interested in Denver opportunities. Thomson's firm became the vehicle for implementing creative development strategies that traditional Denver firms had been avoiding. The collaboration exceeded everyone's expectations. Thomson's market knowledge combined with Phoenix's capital and Summit's analytical capabilities created a partnership that could identify, fund, and execute development projects with unprecedented efficiency. Within 3 months, Thomson's firm had secured 5 major projects that were generating significant returns while establishing new standards for innovative commercial development in Denver. Meanwhile, Brooks and Associates struggled to adapt to the changing market dynamics. Without Marcus Thomson's strategic insights, my father was relying on conventional approaches that seemed increasingly outdated compared to the innovative projects flourishing around him. The company that had once dominated Denver commercial real estate was becoming a follower rather than a leader, watching competitors implement strategies that Richard Brooks dismissed as impractical. The shift in market perception was gradual, but unmistakable. Developers who had automatically approached Brooks and Associates for major projects began exploring alternatives. Young entrepreneurs chose innovative funding sources over established firms that imposed rigid criteria and lengthy approval processes. Even longtime clients started questioning whether Brooks and Associates could provide the creative thinking needed for complex modern developments. My phone rang on a Friday evening while I was reviewing financial reports in my Austin apartment. The caller ID showed my mother's number, the first time she'd contacted me since I'd moved to Texas 18 months earlier. My heart rate accelerated as I considered the possible reasons for her call. "Hannah, sweetheart, how are you doing?" Mom's voice carried a strain that immediately told me this wasn't a casual check-in call. "I'm doing well, Mom. How are things in Denver?" There was a pause long enough that I wondered if the connection had dropped. When she spoke again, her voice was carefully controlled in the way that meant she was trying not to reveal too much emotion. "Your father has been having a difficult time lately. The business situation has been challenging since Marcus left the partnership." I felt a complex mixture of satisfaction and genuine concern for my mother, who'd always been caught in the middle of family tensions she hadn't created. "I'm sorry to hear that. Are you both okay?" "We're managing, but Hannah, I think your father is starting to realize that he made some mistakes in how he handled things with Marcus, and with other situations as well." The careful way she said other situations made it clear she was referring to my departure without directly mentioning the conversation that had driven me away from Denver. My mother had always been diplomatic, but this was the closest she'd ever come to acknowledging that my father's business judgment might be flawed. Sometimes it takes difficult circumstances for people to recognize when they need to reconsider their approaches, I said, choosing my words as carefully as she had chosen hers. Hannah, would you consider coming home for a visit? I know your father would appreciate seeing you, and I think it might be good for both of you to talk. The invitation was tempting for reasons my mother couldn't possibly understand. I was curious about my father's state of mind as his business struggled with challenges that my investments were helping to create. But I wasn't ready for direct confrontation. The anonymous strategy was working too well to risk exposure through emotional family dynamics. I'm pretty committed to my work here in Austin right now, Mom. But maybe in a few months when things are less busy. I understand, sweetheart. Just know that you're missed, and that your father has been asking about you more frequently lately. After ending the call, I sat in my apartment considering the implications of my mother's carefully worded invitation. My father was experiencing enough pressure that my mother felt compelled to reach out, despite our family's pattern of avoiding direct discussion of uncomfortable topics. The strategy was working, but it was also affecting people I cared about in ways that were more complicated than I'd anticipated. The next phase of my plan required careful timing and strategic patience. Phoenix Ventures had established itself as a major force in Denver commercial real estate, but the anonymous investor remained completely unknown to the public and the industry. The time was approaching when that anonymity would need to end. But the revelation had to happen in a way that maximized impact while protecting my interests. Tyler unknowingly provided the opportunity I'd been waiting for. Summit Capital Partners was invited to present at the annual Rocky Mountain Real Estate Conference, Denver's premier industry event where major players gathered to discuss market trends and investment opportunities. The conference would bring together everyone who mattered in Colorado commercial real estate, including my father and the competitors who'd been benefiting from Phoenix Ventures funding. Hannah, I want you to represent Summit at the conference, Tyler announced during our Monday morning strategy meeting. Your role in developing the Phoenix partnership makes you the ideal person to discuss innovative investment strategies and collaboration opportunities. The invitation was perfect, allowing me to return to Denver as a recognized industry professional, rather than Richard Brooks' disappointing daughter. What kind of presentation are you envisioning? A case study of how strategic partnerships between investment firms and anonymous investors can create opportunities that traditional approaches miss. Use our collaboration with Phoenix as the primary example, focusing on how innovative thinking generates superior returns in challenging markets. I spent 3 weeks developing a presentation that would demonstrate the success of Phoenix Ventures' strategy without revealing my identity as the anonymous investor. The presentation would show how innovative funding approaches had reshaped Denver's commercial real estate landscape, using specific examples of projects that had succeeded while traditional firms missed opportunities. The irony was delicious. I would be standing on a stage in front of Denver's real estate elite, including my father, explaining how anonymous investment strategies had disrupted traditional business models and generated superior returns through creative thinking and strategic risk-taking. Every example I discussed would represent a project that Brooks and Associates had failed to pursue. Every success story would demonstrate the cost of my father's inflexible approach to business development. The conference was held at the Colorado Convention Center, the same venue where my father had received recognition as a rising star in Denver real estate 15 years earlier. Walking through the lobby surrounded by industry professionals who treated me as a colleague rather than Richard Brooks's daughter felt like entering a completely different world from the one I'd left 2 years earlier. Tyler had flown in from Austin to introduce my presentation and provide context for Summit's partnership with Phoenix Ventures. His enthusiasm for the collaboration was genuine and infectious, making it clear that our strategic alliance had exceeded Summit's expectations for market expansion and innovative investment opportunities. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce Hannah Brooks, Summit Capital Partners lead strategist for our Denver market initiatives. Hannah has been instrumental in developing one of the most successful investment partnerships in Colorado's recent commercial real estate history. I walked to the podium with confidence that would have been impossible 2 years earlier, when my sense of professional worth had been tied to my father's approval. The audience included developers I'd funded through Phoenix Ventures, competitors who'd been losing market share to our innovative approaches, and traditional investors who dismissed creative funding strategies as too risky or unconventional. My father was sitting in the third row, his expression unreadable as he looked at the daughter he'd sent away to find work more suitable to her limited capabilities. Next to him sat Linda Foster, the secretary who'd witnessed my rejection and Marcus Thompson's resignation. Behind them, I could see several developers whose projects had been funded by Phoenix Ventures, though they had no idea that the anonymous investor they'd worked with was standing at the podium. 2 years ago, Denver's commercial real estate market was dominated by traditional investment approaches that prioritized safety over innovation and conventional wisdom over creative thinking, I began, my voice carrying clearly through the conference center's audio system. Today, that market has been transformed by investors who recognize that the greatest opportunities often disguise themselves as unconventional risks. I clicked to the first slide of my presentation, showing a map of Denver with colored pins, marking innovative developments that had been completed or were under construction. The pattern was immediately obvious to everyone in the audience. The most successful projects were concentrated in emerging neighborhoods where traditional investors had been reluctant to commit capital. These projects represent over $200 million in innovative investment capital that has flowed into Denver commercial real estate over the past 18 months. Mixed-use developments, sustainable construction, technology-focused office spaces, and creative renovations that preserve character while adding modern functionality. My father's expression had shifted from unreadable to focused attention. He was studying the map with the intensity of someone trying to understand a pattern that had significant implications for his business. The interesting aspect of these investments is not just their success rate, which has exceeded industry averages by significant margins, but the speed and efficiency of the funding process. Anonymous investors with sophisticated market knowledge have been able to identify opportunities, evaluate proposals, and commit capital in timeframes that traditional firms couldn't match. I advanced to the next slide, showing financial performance data for Phoenix Ventures investments compared to industry benchmarks. The numbers were impressive by any standard, demonstrating consistent returns that justified the innovative approaches and creative risk assessment. Traditional investment firms often miss these opportunities because their evaluation criteria are designed to minimize risk rather than maximize potential. Anonymous investors with patient capital and sophisticated market analysis can support projects that require creative thinking rather than conventional approaches. The audience was paying close attention now, recognizing that I was describing investment strategies that were reshaping their industry. Several people were taking notes, while others were studying the financial data with obvious interest. Summit Capital Partners has been privileged to collaborate with one such anonymous investor, Phoenix Ventures, whose strategic approach to the Denver market demonstrates how innovative thinking creates sustainable competitive advantages. I clicked to a slide showing the 3 major projects where Summit and Phoenix had collaborated, highlighting the financial returns and market impact of each development. The audience could see that these weren't speculative ventures, but carefully analyzed investments that had generated substantial value for all stakeholders. The key insight from this collaboration is that anonymous investment allows sophisticated investors to evaluate opportunities without market speculation affecting property values or development costs. They can support innovation without the public scrutiny that sometimes accompanies major investment decisions. My father was leaning forward in his seat, clearly trying to understand how these anonymous investments had escaped his attention, despite their significant impact on the Denver market. I could see him making mental calculations about the opportunities his firm had missed and the competitive pressures that were affecting Brooks and Associates. The strategic implications for traditional investment firms are significant, I continued, addressing the concerns that I knew were on everyone's mind. Firms that continue to rely on conventional approaches risk losing market share to competitors who embrace innovative funding strategies and creative development concepts. The slide changed to show market share data for Denver's major real estate firms over the past 2 years. Brooks and Associates' decline was clearly visible, as was the corresponding rise of newer firms and innovative partnerships that had captured deals my father's company had been unable or unwilling to pursue. The firms that have maintained or increased market share during this period have demonstrated flexibility in their investment criteria and willingness to support projects that require creative thinking rather than conventional wisdom. I could see my father's jaw tighten as he absorbed the implications of the data I was presenting. His company's declining market position wasn't just visible to him anymore. It was being discussed publicly in front of his peers and competitors, with clear analysis of the strategic decisions that had contributed to Brooks and Associates' loss of competitive advantage. The future of commercial real estate investment in Denver, and in secondary markets generally, belongs to firms that can combine sophisticated market analysis with flexible funding approaches and creative development strategies. Anonymous investors, with patient capital and strategic vision, will continue to identify opportunities that traditional approaches miss. I advance to my final slide, showing projected market trends and investment opportunities for the next 5 years. The analysis demonstrated that innovative approaches would continue gaining market share, while traditional firms faced increasing competitive pressure. The lesson for investment professionals is clear. The market rewards innovation, creative thinking, and strategic risk-taking. Firms that embrace these principles will thrive. Those that cling to outdated approaches will continue losing ground to competitors who understand that the greatest opportunities often require unconventional wisdom. The applause was enthusiastic and sustained, with several audience members nodding in obvious agreement with the strategic analysis I'd presented. Tyler was beaming with pride at the positive reception, clearly recognizing that my presentation had established Summit as a thought leader in innovative investment strategies. During the question and answer session that followed, several developers asked about Phoenix Ventures' criteria for project evaluation and funding timelines. I answered their questions professionally while maintaining the anonymous investor's privacy, providing enough information to demonstrate Phoenix's sophistication without revealing details that could compromise their strategic advantages. My father didn't ask any questions during the formal session, but I could see him studying me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not dismissal or patronizing concern, but genuine professional evaluation of my knowledge and capabilities. For the first time in my life, Richard Brooks was looking at his daughter as a peer rather than a child whose career aspirations exceeded her abilities. After the presentation concluded, I was surrounded by industry professionals who wanted to discuss collaboration opportunities with Summit and potential access to Phoenix Ventures' funding capabilities. The conversations were exactly what I'd hoped for, establishing me as a recognized expert in innovative investment strategies while building networks that would support future developments. Tyler was networking enthusiastically, clearly energized by the positive response to Summit's partnership model and strategic approach. Hannah, that presentation was brilliant. You've established Summit as the premier intermediary for innovative investment partnerships in secondary markets. I was accepting congratulations from a group of developers when I noticed my father approaching. His expression was serious but not hostile, the look of someone who needed to have a conversation that couldn't wait for a more convenient time. Hannah, could I speak with you privately for a few minutes? The request sent a jolt of adrenaline through my system, but I maintained my professional composure. Of course. Tyler, I'll catch up with you in a few minutes. My father led me to a quiet corner of the conference center lobby, away from the crowds of industry professionals who were continuing their networking conversations. When he turned to face me, his expression was more thoughtful than I'd ever seen it. "That was an impressive presentation. Your analysis of market trends and investment strategies was very sophisticated." The compliment was genuine, and I could hear surprise in his voice that his daughter possessed the kind of professional expertise he'd just witnessed. "Thank you. I've learned a lot working with innovative investors and creative development strategies. Hannah, I owe you an apology. When you applied to work at Brooks & Associates, I made assumptions about your capabilities that were clearly incorrect. Your work at Summit demonstrates exactly the kind of strategic thinking that our industry needs." The apology was more than I'd expected, but it also carried the tone of someone who still didn't fully understand the magnitude of his mistake. "I appreciate that, Dad. I've been watching some of the developments you mentioned in your presentation, and I have to admit that Brooks & Associates missed opportunities we should have pursued. The anonymous investor you discussed, Phoenix Ventures, has been funding exactly the kind of projects that Marcus kept proposing." My heart rate accelerated at the mention of Phoenix Ventures, but I kept my expression neutral. Innovation often looks risky until someone demonstrates its profitability. That's exactly what Marcus used to say. I'm beginning to think I was too conservative in my evaluation of creative investment opportunities. My father paused, studying my face with the same intensity he'd shown during my presentation. "Hannah, would you consider returning to Denver? Brooks & Associates needs the kind of strategic thinking you've developed at Summit. I'd like to offer you a senior position with authority to evaluate and pursue innovative investment opportunities." The offer was everything I'd wanted too. Years earlier, validation from my father and recognition of my professional capabilities. But it was also evidence that he still didn't understand the full scope of what had happened since he'd rejected my original application. "That's a generous offer, Dad, but I'm committed to my work with Summit and our partnership with Phoenix Ventures. I've found my place in the investment world, and it's not in Denver." His expression showed disappointment, but also acceptance that his daughter had moved beyond the family business he'd once refused to let her join. "I understand. But Hannah, I want you to know that I was wrong about your abilities. You've proven that you have exactly the kind of business instincts that build successful companies." As I walked away from that conversation, I realized that my father's apology was both satisfying and incomplete. He recognized my professional competence now, but he still had no idea that the anonymous investor reshaping Denver's commercial real estate market was his own daughter. The woman he'd dismissed as unsuited for real business pressures had become the strategic force that was teaching him the cost of inflexible thinking and dismissive judgment. The revelation would come eventually, but not yet. I was enjoying the education process too much to cut it short. The call came at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday, 3 weeks after the conference presentation, that had left my father questioning everything he thought he knew about innovative investment strategies. Tyler's voice carried an urgency that immediately commanded my full attention. "Hannah, we have a situation. Phoenix Ventures just received an acquisition offer that could change everything." I set down my coffee cup and walked to the window of my Austin apartment, looking out at the city where I'd rebuilt my professional identity while secretly reshaping the Denver real estate market. "What kind of acquisition offer?" "Meridian Capital Group wants to purchase Phoenix Ventures' entire Denver portfolio. They're offering $450 million for all current projects and future development rights. It's the kind of offer that would establish Phoenix as one of the most successful anonymous investors in commercial real estate history." The news sent a complex mixture of emotions through me. Pride at the magnitude of success I'd achieved, concern about the implications for my ongoing strategy, and excitement about the opportunities that kind of capital could create. But most importantly, I recognized this as the moment when my anonymity would become impossible to maintain. Has Phoenix responded to the offer? That's why I'm calling. Meridian is demanding to know the identity of Phoenix's principals before they'll finalize the deal. They want face-to-face negotiations with the actual decision-makers, not representatives or intermediaries. Anonymous investment is one thing, but $450 million requires direct accountability. I had anticipated this moment from the beginning of my Phoenix Ventures strategy, but the reality of it was still overwhelming. The success had exceeded my most optimistic projections, creating a situation where continued anonymity was incompatible with the scale of opportunities that success had generated. What's Summit's recommendation? That depends entirely on Phoenix's long-term objectives. If they want to cash out and establish themselves as a major player in national real estate investment, this offer provides that opportunity. If they want to maintain their Denver focus and anonymous status, they should reject the offer and continue their current strategy. Tyler paused, and I could hear the sound of papers shuffling in the background. Hannah, there's something else. Meridian specifically mentioned that they've been tracking Phoenix's investments for over a year. They're not just interested in the portfolio. They want to partner with whoever has been making the strategic decisions that generated these returns. The implication was clear. My investment strategy had attracted attention from major players who recognized sophistication and market knowledge that went beyond lucky speculation. Phoenix Ventures had established itself as a serious force in commercial real estate investment, worthy of partnership with national firms that manage billions in capital. I need to discuss this with Phoenix's principals and get back to you with their decision. Of course. But Hannah, time is a factor. Meridian wants a response within 72 hours. After that, they're moving on to other opportunities. I spent the rest of that morning walking through Austin's downtown district, thinking through the implications of accepting or rejecting Meridian's offer. Accepting would provide the capital to expand Phoenix Ventures into a national investment firm, but it would also require revealing my identity and ending the anonymous strategy that had been so effective in Denver. Rejecting the offer would maintain my current approach, but it would also mean passing up opportunities that could transform Phoenix into a major player in commercial real estate investment. The decision crystallized when I realized that my original objective had already been achieved. I'd proven my father wrong about my business capabilities in ways that exceeded even my own expectations. Phoenix Ventures had demonstrated strategic thinking and market knowledge that traditional Denver firms couldn't match. The time had come to claim credit for that success and use it to build something even larger. I called Tyler back that afternoon, with Phoenix's decision. Phoenix Ventures is interested in exploring Meridian's offer, but they want to structure the negotiation to maintain control over their strategic direction and investment philosophy. That's exactly what I hoped you'd say. What kind of structure are they envisioning? A partnership rather than a complete acquisition. Phoenix maintains operational independence and decision-making authority for their investments, while Meridian provides capital and access to national opportunities. Phoenix's principals would be willing to reveal their identity as part of a long-term strategic alliance. Tyler's excitement was immediately obvious in his voice. That's a much more sophisticated approach than a simple buyout. It preserves what makes Phoenix successful while creating opportunities for expansion that wouldn't be possible independently. Phoenix also wants Summit to continue as their primary analytical and administrative partner. Any deal with Meridian should include provisions for Summit's ongoing involvement in Phoenix's investment activities. Hannah, if you can structure a three-way partnership between Phoenix, Meridian, and Summit, it would establish all three organizations as major players in innovative commercial real estate investment. That's exactly the kind of strategic thinking that defines careers in this industry. The negotiations with Meridian Capital Group required 3 weeks of careful legal and financial structuring, with each party's interests balanced against the others in ways that created mutual benefit rather than zero-sum competition. Phoenix Ventures would maintain control over investment decisions and strategic direction while gaining access to Meridian's capital and national network. Summit Capital Partners would continue providing analytical support and administrative services while expanding their client base to include Meridian's other investment activities. The partnership agreement included provisions for Phoenix's principals to reveal their identity at a formal announcement event that would introduce the new alliance to the commercial real estate industry. The event was scheduled for the Grand Hyatt in Denver, with invitations extended to major players throughout Colorado's business community. I spent 2 weeks preparing for the revelation that would end my anonymous status and establish me publicly as the strategic mind behind Phoenix Ventures' success. The preparation involved coordinating with legal teams, financial advisors, and public relations specialists who would manage the announcement and its aftermath. But the most important preparation was emotional, getting ready to face my father's reaction when he discovered that his daughter had become the anonymous investor whose success had been teaching him the cost of dismissive judgment. The day before the announcement event, I flew to Denver and checked into the same hotel where the press conference would take place. My parents had been invited to attend, along with the rest of Denver's commercial real estate community, though they had no idea why their daughter's investment firm was hosting such a significant industry event. Tyler arrived that evening for a final strategy session, bringing contracts and financial documents that would formalize the partnership agreement. His excitement about the announcement was infectious, though he still had no idea about the personal dimensions of what would happen when Phoenix Ventures' identity was revealed. "Hannah, tomorrow changes everything for all of us. Phoenix's success establishes Summit as a major player in innovative investment partnerships, and your role in facilitating this alliance positions you for leadership opportunities that most people spend decades working toward." I smiled, appreciating Tyler's enthusiasm while privately acknowledging that tomorrow would change things in ways he couldn't possibly anticipate. It's been an incredible journey from that first conversation about anonymous investment strategies. The best part is that Phoenix's principals are finally going to get the recognition they deserve for the strategic thinking that built this portfolio. Whoever they are, they've demonstrated market knowledge and investment instincts that rival the best firms in the country. Tyler had no way of knowing that he was praising the very person sitting across from him, the colleague he'd been working with for 2 years while she secretly orchestrated the investment strategy he was celebrating. The revelation would be as much of a surprise to him as to anyone else in the industry. The morning of the announcement dawned clear and bright, with Colorado's mountains visible from my hotel room window. I dressed carefully in a navy business suit that conveyed authority and professionalism, the same navy that I'd worn to my father's office 2.5 years earlier when he'd rejected my application and dismissed my career as secretarial work. The Grand Hyatt's ballroom was filled with Denver's commercial real estate elite, including developers who'd been funded by Phoenix Ventures, competitors who'd lost market share to innovative investment strategies, and traditional firms that were struggling to adapt to changing market dynamics. My parents sat in the third row, looking curious but comfortable in the kind of industry event they'd attended countless times throughout my father's career. Meridian Capital Group's CEO, Robert Chen, opened the event with remarks about the importance of innovative investment partnerships and the value of working with strategic thinkers who understood market dynamics at sophisticated levels. His praise for Phoenix Ventures' track record and investment philosophy set the stage for the revelation that would follow. Tyler followed with a presentation about Summit's role in facilitating the partnership and the analytical capabilities that had supported Phoenix's decision-making process. His enthusiasm for the collaboration was genuine and obvious, making it clear that Summit viewed this alliance as a transformative opportunity for all parties involved. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now my privilege to introduce the principals of Phoenix Ventures, whose strategic vision and market knowledge have created one of the most successful investment portfolios in Colorado's recent commercial real estate history. I walked to the podium with confidence that had been earned through 2.5 years of proving my capabilities in markets that rewarded results rather than relationships. The audience included everyone who mattered in Denver's commercial real estate community, all of whom were about to discover that the anonymous investor they'd been discussing and analyzing was Richard Brooks' daughter. "Good morning. I'm Hannah Brooks, founder and managing principal of Phoenix Ventures." The silence that followed was profound and electric. I could see recognition spreading through the audience as people connected the name Brooks with the father they all knew, while processing the implications of his daughter being the anonymous investor who'd been reshaping their industry. My father's expression went through several distinct phases. Initial confusion as he tried to understand why his daughter was speaking at an event about anonymous investors. Dawning recognition as he processed what I'd just revealed. And finally, a mixture of shock, pride, and something that might have been respect for the magnitude of what I'd accomplished. For the past 2.5 years, Phoenix Ventures has invested over $300 million in Denver commercial real estate projects that demonstrated innovation, creativity, and strategic thinking. Mixed-use developments, sustainable construction, technology-focused office spaces, and adaptive renovations that preserved character while adding modern functionality. I clicked to a slide showing the complete portfolio of Phoenix Ventures investments, a map that demonstrated systematic and sophisticated approach to market development that had created value for investors, developers, and the broader Denver community. These investments were guided by a philosophy that the greatest opportunities often disguise themselves as unconventional risks, and that strategic thinking creates sustainable competitive advantages over traditional approaches that prioritize safety over innovation. The audience was paying intense attention now, recognizing that they were hearing the strategic thinking behind investment decisions that had puzzled and impressed them for years. Several people were taking notes, while others were studying the financial data with obvious fascination. The success of Phoenix Ventures demonstrates that anonymous investment allows sophisticated analysis without market speculation affecting property values or development costs. It enables support for innovation without the public scrutiny that sometimes accompanies major investment decisions. I advanced to a slide showing Phoenix's financial performance compared to industry benchmarks, numbers that spoke for themselves about the effectiveness of innovative investment strategies and creative risk assessment. Today's announcement of our partnership with Meridian Capital Group and continued collaboration with Summit Capital Partners represents the next phase of Phoenix Ventures development. We're expanding our focus from Denver to national opportunities, while maintaining the investment philosophy and strategic approach that generated success in Colorado. My father was leaning forward in his seat, clearly trying to process the full implications of what he was hearing. His daughter hadn't just found work in Austin that was more suitable to her capabilities. She'd built an investment firm that was being celebrated as one of the most successful anonymous investors in commercial real estate history. The partnership with Meridian provides access to capital and opportunities that will allow Phoenix Ventures to support innovative projects in markets throughout the country, while our ongoing collaboration with Summit ensures analytical capabilities and administrative support that maintain our strategic effectiveness. I clicked to the final slide, showing projected expansion plans and investment objectives for the next 5 years. The scope was ambitious by any standard, demonstrating that Phoenix Ventures had evolved from a Denver-focused investment strategy into a national platform for innovative commercial real estate development. The lesson from Phoenix Ventures: success is that the market rewards strategic thinking, creative analysis, and willingness to support projects that require innovation rather than conventional wisdom. The future belongs to investors who understand that calculated risks often generate superior returns compared to safe approaches that miss transformative opportunities. The applause was sustained and enthusiastic, with several audience members nodding in obvious appreciation for the strategic insights I'd shared. But I was watching my father's reaction, seeing him absorb the full scope of what his daughter had accomplished, while he'd been struggling with the competitive pressures that her success had helped create. During the question and answer session, several developers asked about Phoenix Ventures' criteria for evaluating national opportunities and timelines for expanding beyond Colorado. I answered their questions professionally while maintaining focus on the business strategy rather than the personal dimensions of the revelation. Marcus Thompson, my father's former partner, asked the question that everyone was thinking but hadn't yet verbalized. Hannah, Phoenix Ventures funded several projects that Brooks & Associates had evaluated and declined to pursue. Was that coincidental, or was there strategic intent behind competing with your father's firm? The question created complete silence. In the ballroom, with everyone recognizing that the answer would reveal the personal motivations behind Phoenix's investment strategy. I looked directly at my father as I responded. Phoenix Ventures funded projects that demonstrated innovation and strategic potential, regardless of which firms had previously evaluated them. Our investment criteria prioritized market analysis and development potential over traditional relationships or conventional wisdom. It was a diplomatic answer that acknowledged the competitive dynamic without revealing the personal motivations that had driven my initial strategy. But everyone in the audience understood the implications. Richard Brooks' daughter had become his most effective competitor, using innovative approaches to capture opportunities that his traditional methods had missed. After the formal presentation concluded, I was surrounded by industry professionals who wanted to discuss investment opportunities and partnership possibilities with Phoenix Ventures. The conversations demonstrated that the revelation had enhanced rather than diminished my credibility, with people recognizing that my success was even more impressive given the competitive context. Tyler was practically glowing with excitement about the opportunities the announcement had created for Summit's partnership with Phoenix and potential collaboration with Meridian. Hannah, I had no idea you were Phoenix's principal. The strategic thinking you've demonstrated over the past 2 years makes perfect sense now. You weren't just facilitating our partnership with Phoenix. You were Phoenix. I smiled at his realization, appreciating both his surprise and his immediate recognition of the strategic complexity I'd been managing. I hope the revelation doesn't change our working relationship. Summit's analytical capabilities have been crucial for Phoenix's success. Change it? This elevates everything we've been building together. You've proven that innovative investment strategies can compete successfully with traditional approaches, and you've done it while maintaining complete professional integrity and strategic focus. Across the ballroom, I could see my father standing with a small group of longtime industry colleagues, clearly processing the implications of what he'd learned about his daughter's career. His expression was thoughtful rather than hostile, suggesting that professional respect was overriding personal complications. My mother approached as the crowd began to thin, her face showing a mixture of pride and amazement that her daughter had achieved such significant success while maintaining complete secrecy about her activities. Hannah, I'm so proud of what you've accomplished. But sweetheart, why didn't you tell us what you were building? The question was fair and difficult to answer without revealing the hurt and anger that had motivated my initial strategy. I wanted to prove that I could succeed on my own merits before discussing my career with family. Phoenix Ventures needed to establish credibility independently. Mom studied my face with the intuition that comes from decades of reading people's emotions. This wasn't just about proving yourself professionally, was it? This was about proving something to your father. I didn't answer directly, but my silence was confirmation enough. Mom nodded slowly, understanding the personal dimensions of what had appeared to be purely business decisions. He's learned something important today, Hannah. About you, and about his own judgment. My father approached as Mom and I concluded our conversation, his expression serious but not unfriendly. When he spoke, his voice carried respect that I'd never heard before when he addressed me. Hannah, I owe you more than an apology. You've built something remarkable, and you've done it with exactly the kind of strategic thinking that I failed to recognize when you wanted to join Brooks & Associates. He paused, looking around the ballroom at the industry professionals who were still discussing Phoenix Ventures' success and the partnership announcement. I've been watching some of your investments over the past year, wondering who had the market knowledge, and capital to support such innovative projects, I never imagined it was my daughter. Innovation often comes from unexpected sources, I replied, choosing words that acknowledged his recognition without diminishing the magnitude of his original mistake. Hannah, I want you to know that what you've achieved changes my understanding of everything I thought I knew about business judgment and strategic thinking. Phoenix Ventures' success demonstrates capabilities that I completely underestimated. My father extended his hand in a gesture that was both personal and professional, recognition of me as a peer rather than as his daughter seeking approval. I'm proud of what you've built, and I'm sorry it took me so long to understand what you were capable of achieving. I shook his hand, feeling a complex mixture of satisfaction and closure that was more profound than I'd expected. The validation was meaningful not because I needed his approval, but because it represented acknowledgement of the strategic thinking and business capabilities that he'd dismissed as inadequate for real commercial pressures. Thank you, Dad. That means more than you know. As the event concluded and people began leaving the ballroom, I realized that the revelation had accomplished everything I'd hoped for while creating opportunities I hadn't anticipated. Phoenix Ventures was now positioned to expand nationally, with Meridian's support and Summit's continued partnership. My professional reputation was established independently of family connections or inherited advantages, and my father finally understood the cost of his dismissive judgment and inflexible thinking. The anonymous strategy had ended, but it had accomplished its purpose. I'd proven that Richard Brooks' daughter possessed exactly the kind of business, instincts, and strategic thinking that built successful companies. The secretarial work had generated returns that exceeded most traditional investment approaches, while demonstrating that innovative thinking could compete successfully with conventional wisdom. Walking out of the Grand Hyatt that afternoon, I felt the satisfaction of completing a journey that had transformed me from a rejected applicant seeking family approval into a recognized leader in commercial real estate investment. The woman who'd been told she wasn't suited for real business pressures had created business pressures that were reshaping the industry her father had once dominated. But more importantly, I'd discovered who I could become when I stopped trying to fit into someone else's definition of my potential, and started building something that reflected my own vision of what was possible. Phoenix Ventures represented everything I was capable of achieving when I trusted my strategic instincts and refused to accept limitations imposed by other people's narrow understanding of my capabilities. The revelation was complete, but it was also a beginning. Phoenix Ventures would continue growing and evolving, but now with the recognition and resources needed to support innovative projects on a national scale. The anonymous investor had become a public figure, but the strategic thinking and market knowledge that had driven Phoenix's success would continue creating opportunities that traditional approaches missed. My father had finally learned what his daughter was capable of building when she was allowed to pursue her own vision of business success. The education had been expensive for his firm and profitable for mine, but it had also been necessary for both of us to understand the true scope of what was possible when innovative thinking was supported rather than dismissed. 6 months after, the revelation that transformed Phoenix Ventures from an anonymous investment firm into a nationally recognized leader in innovative commercial real estate development, I stood in the corner office of our new Austin headquarters, looking out at a view that symbolized everything I'd built from the ashes of my father's dismissal. The office occupied the top floor of a sustainable technology complex that Phoenix had funded and developed, creating a workspace that reflected our commitment to forward-thinking design and environmental responsibility. The partnership with Meridian Capital Group had exceeded every projection, providing access to opportunities in 12 major metropolitan markets across the country. Phoenix Ventures was now managing over $2 billion in commercial real estate investments, each project selected for its potential to demonstrate innovation while generating superior returns for all stakeholders. The anonymous strategy that had begun as a way to prove my capabilities to my father had evolved into a national platform for supporting creative development projects that traditional investors consistently overlooked. Tyler knocked on my office door carrying the quarterly performance reports that documented Phoenix's continued success in markets from Seattle to Miami. His role had expanded significantly since the Meridian partnership, establishing him as Summit Capital Partners Director of Innovative Investment Strategies and my primary collaborator in identifying opportunities that required creative thinking rather than conventional approaches. Hannah, the numbers are even better than we projected. Phoenix's national portfolio is outperforming industry benchmarks by an average of 38%, and we have developers in 6 new markets requesting funding for projects that their local investment firms have declined to support. I, too, accepted the reports with satisfaction that went beyond financial returns, though the numbers themselves were impressive by any standard. Phoenix Ventures had proven that innovative investment strategies could generate consistent profits while supporting projects that created lasting value for communities and stakeholders. What's the breakdown by market sector? Mixed-use developments are leading returns, followed by sustainable construction and technology-focused office spaces. The adaptive renovation projects are generating strong cash flow while creating significant community impact in emerging neighborhoods. Tyler spread out maps showing Phoenix's current investments across the country, each pin representing a project that demonstrated our philosophy that calculated risks often produced superior results compared to safe approaches that missed transformative opportunities. The interesting development is that traditional investment firms in several markets are starting to modify their criteria to compete with Phoenix's approach. We're not just succeeding with innovative strategies, we're influencing how the entire industry evaluates creative development proposals. The observation was particularly satisfying because it represented validation of the strategic thinking that my father had dismissed as impractical just 3 years earlier. Phoenix Ventures wasn't just succeeding in niche markets. We were demonstrating that innovative approaches could generate mainstream success, while traditional firms struggled to adapt to changing market dynamics. My phone buzzed with a text message from my mother, asking if I'd seen the morning edition of the Denver Business Journal. I pulled up the digital version on my tablet and found myself looking at a feature article about the transformation of Denver's commercial real estate landscape over the past 3 years. The headline read, "Innovation Overtakes Tradition: How Anonymous Investment Reshaped Colorado's Commercial Development." The article profiled several firms that had gained market share by embracing creative funding strategies and supporting projects that required strategic thinking rather than conventional wisdom. Brooks and Associates was mentioned prominently, but not in ways that would have pleased my father. The piece described how traditional firms had lost ground to competitors who understood that the greatest opportunities often disguised themselves as unconventional risks. Marcus Thompson's new firm was featured as a success story, highlighting how his partnership with innovative investors had allowed him to implement development strategies that generated superior returns while creating lasting community value. The article noted that Thompson's success had come at the expense of more established firms that had been unwilling to support his creative proposals. Phoenix Ventures received extensive coverage as the investment firm whose strategic approach had enabled much of the innovation profiled in the article. The piece praised our ability to identify promising projects and provide responsive funding that allowed developers to implement their vision without the lengthy approval processes and restrictive criteria imposed by traditional investors. But the most interesting section focused on the competitive pressures facing established firms like Brooks and Associates, which had dominated Denver's commercial real estate market for decades before losing significant market share to more innovative competitors. The article suggested that firms unable to adapt to changing market dynamics would continue struggling while creative investors captured opportunities they failed to recognize. Tyler noticed me reading the article and smiled with obvious satisfaction. That piece basically confirms everything we've been saying about market trends and strategic positioning. Phoenix's success isn't just about generating returns. It's about demonstrating new approaches that other firms are now trying to emulate. I set down the tablet and walked to the window, looking out at Austin's skyline and thinking about the journey that had brought me from Richard Brooks' rejected daughter to the founder of an investment firm that was influencing industry practices across the country. The transformation had been more complete than I'd imagined possible when I'd first conceived the Phoenix Ventures strategy. Tyler, there's something I want to discuss with you. I've been thinking about expanding our impact beyond just commercial real estate investment. He looked up from the performance reports with immediate interest. What kind of expansion? Educational initiatives that teach innovative investment strategies to young professionals, particularly women who face the kind of dismissive attitudes that I experienced early in my career. Phoenix Ventures has proven that strategic thinking and creative analysis can generate superior results. I want to share those insights with people who might not otherwise have access to mentorship in innovative approaches. Tyler's enthusiasm was immediate and obvious. That's a brilliant extension of Phoenix's success. You've demonstrated investment strategies that outperform traditional approaches. Teaching those methods to the next generation would multiply your impact exponentially. I had been developing this concept for several months, recognizing that Phoenix Ventures' success created opportunities to influence the industry in ways that went beyond individual projects and financial returns. The educational initiative would formalize the mentorship and strategic guidance that had been crucial for my own development, while addressing systemic barriers that prevented talented people from accessing opportunities in innovative investment. I want to establish the Phoenix Institute for Strategic Investment, offering programs that teach analytical methods, creative risk assessment, and innovative funding approaches. The curriculum would combine theoretical knowledge with practical application, using Phoenix's portfolio as case studies for strategic decision-making. Tyler was already envisioning the possibilities, his excitement building as he considered the implications. Hannah, this could establish Phoenix as more than just an investment firm. You'd be creating an institution that shapes how the next generation approaches commercial real estate development and innovative funding strategies. The Phoenix Institute represented the logical evolution of everything I'd built since leaving Denver, with nothing but hurt pride and determination to prove my capabilities. The anonymous investor who had started by funding creative projects to demonstrate strategic thinking had become a recognized leader whose methods were worthy of formal instruction and systematic development. Over the following weeks, I worked with educational consultants and industry experts to develop curriculum for the Phoenix Institute that would combine rigorous analytical training with practical experience in innovative investment strategies. The program would accept 24 students annually, each selected for their potential to contribute to creative approaches in commercial real estate development. The announcement of the Phoenix Institute generated significant interest throughout the commercial real estate community, with applications coming from young professionals who recognized that innovative thinking was becoming increasingly valuable in markets that rewarded strategic creativity over conventional wisdom. Several major firms committed to sponsoring students whose education would enhance their capabilities while advancing industry practices. My father called on a Thursday evening while I was reviewing applications for the Institute's inaugural class. His voice carried warmth and pride that would have meant everything to me 3 years earlier, though now it felt like validation of a journey I'd completed independently, rather than approval I needed for emotional security. Hannah, I saw the announcement about the Phoenix Institute. What you're building is remarkable, and I wanted you to know how proud I am of everything you've accomplished. The call was appreciated, and I could hear genuine respect in his voice that acknowledged my achievements without diminishing their significance through paternal condescension. Thank you, Dad. The Institute represents everything I've learned about innovative investment strategies and strategic thinking. Brooks & Associates would be honored to sponsor one of your students. I've been implementing some of the approaches that Marcus used to propose, and I'm beginning to understand the value of creative thinking in commercial development. The offer was meaningful because it represented acknowledgement that my father was adapting his business philosophy based on lessons learned from watching Phoenix Ventures succeed with strategies he had previously dismissed. Brooks & Associates. Sponsoring a Phoenix Institute student would symbolize his recognition that innovative approaches deserved support rather than skepticism. I'd be happy to consider Brooks and Associates as a sponsor firm. The Institute's mission is to advance strategic thinking throughout the industry, and that includes traditional firms that want to expand their capabilities. After ending the call, I realized that my father's evolution was as significant as my own success. The man who had dismissed his daughter's capabilities as inadequate for real business pressures was now seeking to learn from the innovative strategies she had pioneered. The education had been expensive for his firm and profitable for mine, but it had also been transformative for both of us. The Phoenix Institute's first class convened 6 months later in our Austin headquarters, bringing together young professionals from diverse backgrounds who shared commitment to advancing innovative approaches in commercial real estate investment. The students included recent graduates from top business schools, experienced analysts seeking to develop creative thinking skills, and entrepreneurs who wanted to understand sophisticated funding strategies. On the opening day of the program, I addressed the inaugural class with reflections on the journey that had led from my father's rejection to the establishment of an institution dedicated to advancing strategic thinking in commercial real estate development. 3 years ago, I was told that my work in finance was essentially secretarial, that I lacked the capabilities needed for real business pressures. Today, Phoenix Ventures manages over $2 billion in innovative investments that have outperformed traditional approaches while creating lasting value for communities across the country. The students were paying intense attention, recognizing that they were hearing first-hand account of how strategic thinking and persistence had overcome dismissive judgment to create exceptional success. Several were taking notes, while others were clearly absorbing lessons that went beyond technical investment knowledge. The Phoenix Institute exists because innovative thinking deserves systematic development and formal recognition. Each of you has demonstrated potential to contribute to creative approaches that advance our industry while generating superior returns for investors and stakeholders. I clicked to a slide showing Phoenix Ventures' portfolio across 12 metropolitan markets, projects that demonstrated how calculated risks often produced better results than safe approaches that missed transformative opportunities. Your education here will combine rigorous analytical training with practical experience in identifying and evaluating projects that require creative thinking rather than conventional wisdom. You'll learn to see opportunities where traditional investors see problems, to support innovation where others impose limitations. The curriculum I had developed reflected everything I'd learned about strategic thinking, creative risk assessment, and innovative funding approaches during my journey from rejected applicant to recognized industry leader. But more importantly, it represented commitment to ensuring that talented people wouldn't face the kind of dismissive barriers that had initially blocked my own career development. During the 6-month program, Phoenix Institute students worked directly with our investment team to analyze real projects and participate in funding decisions that demonstrated practical application of innovative strategies. They learned to evaluate proposals that traditional firms might reject, to identify potential in projects that required creative thinking, and to structure deals that balanced calculated risks with strategic opportunities. The program's capstone project required each student to identify and propose funding for a commercial development project that demonstrated innovative thinking while generating projected returns that justified strategic risk-taking. The proposals were evaluated by Phoenix's investment committee and presented to industry professionals who provided feedback on analytical methods and strategic reasoning. One student, Sarah Chen, proposed funding for a mixed-use development in Portland that combined affordable housing with maker spaces and small business incubators. Traditional investors had rejected the project as too complicated and insufficiently profitable, but Sarah's analysis demonstrated that the community impact would generate long-term value that justified creative financing approaches. Another, student Michael Rodriguez, identified opportunities in adaptive renovation projects that preserved historic architecture while adding modern functionality for technology companies. His proposal showed how Phoenix's investment philosophy could support preservation goals while generating returns through innovative space utilization and strategic market positioning. Phoenix Ventures funded both projects, along with 3 others, proposed by Institute students whose strategic thinking identified opportunities that traditional approaches had missed. The success of these investments validated the Institute's educational model, while demonstrating that systematic training in innovative methods could develop capabilities that advanced industry practices. The graduation ceremony for the Phoenix Institute's first class was held in the ballroom of Austin's newest sustainable conference center, a Phoenix-funded project that exemplified our commitment to environmental responsibility and innovative design. The audience included industry leaders, academic partners, and sponsor firms who had supported students throughout the program. As I addressed the graduates and their families, I reflected on the transformation that had brought me from my father's study, where I'd been told I wasn't suited for business challenges, to a stage where I was celebrating the success of young professionals I'd mentored in advanced strategic thinking. You've demonstrated that innovative approaches can generate superior results while creating lasting value for communities and stakeholders. Your success with real projects proves that creative thinking deserves recognition and systematic development throughout our industry. The graduates represented the next generation of strategic thinkers who would continue advancing innovative approaches in commercial real estate investment. Their education at the Phoenix Institute had provided them with analytical capabilities and practical experience that would enable them to identify opportunities and implement creative solutions throughout their careers. My parents attended the graduation ceremony, traveling from Denver to witness the culmination of my journey from rejected applicant to founder of an institution that was shaping industry practices and advancing strategic thinking in commercial real estate development. Mom's pride was obvious and emotional, while Dad's expression showed respect and amazement at the scope of what I'd built. After the formal ceremony concluded, my father approached with congratulations that carried warmth and genuine appreciation for everything I'd accomplished since leaving Denver 3 years earlier. "Hannah, watching you tonight, seeing what you've built and the young professionals you're developing, I understand that my initial judgment was more than just wrong. It was a failure to recognize exceptional capabilities that deserved support rather than dismissal." He paused, looking around the conference center at the graduates and industry professionals who were celebrating the Phoenix Institute's success and discussing collaboration opportunities with our students. "You've created something that will influence this industry for decades. The Phoenix Institute will develop strategic thinkers who advance innovative approaches long after tonight. That's the kind of lasting impact that defines a truly successful career." I appreciated his recognition, though the validation felt more like acknowledgement of a journey completed than approval needed for emotional security. "Thank you, Dad. Building Phoenix Ventures and establishing the Institute has been the most rewarding work of my life. I have one more apology to make, Hannah. When I told you that your work was secretarial, I didn't just underestimate your capabilities. I failed to understand that the most valuable business skills are often the ones that traditional approaches overlook or dismiss. My father's acknowledgement was meaningful because it represented understanding that went beyond recognizing my individual success to appreciating the broader lessons about innovative thinking and strategic vision that Phoenix Ventures had demonstrated. As the evening concluded and guests began leaving the conference center, I stood with Tyler reviewing plans for the Phoenix Institute's second class and Phoenix Ventures' continued expansion into new markets and innovative project types. The anonymous investor who had started by proving her capabilities to a dismissive father had become a recognized leader whose influence would extend far beyond individual investments or personal vindication. The journey from rejection to recognition had been more transformative than I'd imagined possible when I'd first left Denver, with hurt pride and determination to prove my worth. Phoenix Ventures had succeeded beyond my most optimistic projections, while the Phoenix Institute would ensure that innovative thinking continued advancing throughout the commercial real estate industry. But the most significant transformation had been personal. I discovered who I could become when I stopped seeking approval from people who couldn't recognize my potential and started building something that reflected my own vision of what was possible. The woman who'd been told she wasn't suited for real business pressures had created business pressures that were reshaping the industry while developing the next generation of strategic thinkers. My father had finally learned what his daughter was capable of achieving when her innovative thinking was supported rather than dismissed. The education had been expensive for his understanding and profitable for my development, but it had also been necessary for both of us to discover the true scope of what was possible when strategic vision was allowed to flourish without limitations imposed by conventional wisdom. The secretarial work had generated returns that exceeded most traditional investment approaches, while proving that the greatest opportunities often come disguised as unconventional risks that require creative thinking to recognize and courage to pursue. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.